It would help if I unmute myself. Good lord. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Comics Corner. We've got a lot on tap today. We're talking, of course, the Black Widow lawsuit, the Suicide Squad movie, The Long Halloween, and for our this week in comics history, we have The Watchmen and Barbara Gordon, aka the Oracle version, per request. So,
well, we're sticking mostly with DC today, so
yeah,
it felt appropriate.
It's a DC extravaganza with the news that the entire industry is talking about, and the ramifications of it are going to be huge. But we'll get into that a little bit later. How have you been this week, Curdy?
I am doing great, thanks. It's been quite a week trying to squeeze in enough time to watch the Suicide Squad, but other than that, it's been pretty good. How's your week?
It's been a little crazy. I am starting the very long process of moving back home and trying to find a job. And Helly, what's up? Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
Helly just put Helly with an EY, and that is the first time I've ever seen that. I apologize, Helly, as someone whose name is always misspelled. I am gonna do better.
Honestly, I've never actually seen it spelled that way, so I'm anyways, glad you're here, Helly. Hopefully your day's going okay. Okay, see, that makes sense. But so my schedule is going to be all over the place the next probably 2.5 months until get everything settled back here, get settled back home, and job searching and all that fun things that everybody hates. But I had a plan and I totally lost my train of thought. So news. So there isn't a whole lot going on outside of the insanity that is the Black Widow lawsuit, but there is a couple of things that I want to touch on first. Excuse me, before we get into that and try and do a very brief breakdown. I will link all of the articles that do a much better job of explaining everything than I ever could. But a couple of weeks ago, we got the official kind of first look at the Hawkeye series in terms of photos from set. They look fantastic. Based on the set photos, it looks like it's set at Christmas, which makes sense because it's releasing the day before Thanksgiving, which is fun. I don't think Marvel's ever done a Thanksgiving Christmas release before. So that'll be fun. Oh, Helly, you can talk as much as you want, bud. I'm all for it. So that looks cool. For those of us that are nerds of things across the UK, or across the pond in the UK, the current doctor... Hey, Sage! The current doctor, Jodie Whittaker, and the current showrunner, Chris Chibnall, are leaving at the end of 2022. I believe they're going to do 3 or 4 specials, and then that's going to be it.
Yeah, it tracks. David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, they all had about the same length of run, which was 3 to 4 series.
Yeah.
So Jodie Whittaker, people are saying, oh, she's stepping down from the doctor. She's stepping down from the doctor after about the same length of time as all of the recent doctors.
Yeah,
so it's not some tragedy that she couldn't hack it as being doctor. She's fine.
Yeah, and it's not even that. It's it's the most grueling schedule you will ever undertake as an actor. You're filming 10 months out of the year. When you're not filming, you're doing promo work. So it's exhausting. And as pretty as Wales is, I don't know that I'd want to live there year round all the time.
Say that to the Welsh people.
Yeah. So while I am not a super fan of this current doctor, I think she's being horribly underutilized and not utilized correctly. And part of that is the showrunner. My big thing is I don't like the writing.
Yeah.
You know,
For me, I can get behind some of the adventures they've been on. I like Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. I think she's got some great energy. For me, it was the companions. The storyline with the companions never quite hit. I felt like too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually really excited to see this upcoming season. We just said goodbye to Grant and Ryan,
Mm-hmm.
which were 2 of the 3 companions. And I really wanted to see how it felt just having one companion and Jodie's Doctor. So I think of her run, this is probably going to be my favorite season.
Yeah, and my big thing, like with the writing specifically, is when they change showrunners, as kind of usual, they change the writer's room, which happens. But they brought in a bunch of people who have no experience doing sci-fi fantasy writing. And it's a hard genre if you've been doing it your entire career, let alone to like suddenly go from whatever they were doing before to this. Like, yeah. It's difficult. And so they kind of had a lot of the issues that Star Wars had. You know, in an attempt to bring fans back, they brought out fan favorites like the Jadoon and the Daleks and the Cybermen and all these different wonderful characters.
It felt like a lot.
Yeah, it was like, you know, all of that equaled Palpatine. you know, it was all of these different things that they didn't need to do, and I was just like, okay, guys, just write a good series.
There were 3 things in the last season of Doctor Who that I actually really loved. I loved introducing another version of the Doctor who we have no idea where she fits into history.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun for me. I love the guy that they have playing the Master. I think he did a fantastic job, and he brought like a really quiet, menacing aura to the character that I think has been missing in recent iterations. And so that was just super fun for me. And I actually really enjoyed the changing the history and lore of the Doctor. I like when you take a story that I already know and you decide to start telling it in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
I was on board for all of that. I've been a fan of Doctor Who since the revival. You know, it wasn't something I had access to before, because you don't usually see the older stuff on TV unless you're in the UK.
Yeah.
So I really haven't seen a whole lot from Doctors 1 through 8, but I've seen everything since, all the specials. I've seen Doctors 9 on, and I've been a pretty big Doctor Who fan for several years now.
Yeah.
I still really liked it.
I got into Doctor Who in the middle of Matt Smith's run. And got obsessed with Tennant like everybody else. And I really liked, you know, a lot of the stuff going up to about halfway through the first season of Jodie Whittaker's, I stopped watching because it was just so convoluted. I had no idea what was going on. I haven't seen the latest season. I might actually pick it back up and just do a whole marathon.
Yeah, it wasn't a very long series, so I would go ahead and like just slug through it. There were some really interesting storylines that I really enjoyed, and you still have a little bit like there's too many companions, there's too many, like the bad guys kind of just roll through and they hit all the favorites.
Yeah,
but it builds into, I think, a pretty cohesive story by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my favorite is the Pawns. I love the Pawns. I'm obsessed with the Pawns. If you are a Doctor Who fan, I highly recommend the brand new River Song book. It is written by Alex Kingston, who plays River Song. It is just a delightful read. I also sprung for the audiobook, which she reads, which
I bet that would be good.
Oh, it was so good. It made me happy. But if you are a fan of Doctor Who and you're not super happy with the current stuff, I highly recommend Big Finish. they do all of these audio dramas. The Diary of River Song is some of my favorite stuff. They have stuff from Tenet. They have stuff from Matt Smith. They have stuff from Capaldi. Like, once a doctor retires, that's where they go to kind of continue being the doctor, just not on TV. The one that I want to get is Last Centurion, which I haven't got yet.
Oh, God, I love the Last Centurion storyline. One of my favorite things is what Paul has instigated in my life, and that is the comics. It's Comics Corner. The Doctor Who comics are fun, like little mini adventures that feel like they are TV episodes.
Same with the books.
Yeah, but the art is like really good, and sometimes the storylines are better than what they write for the TV show.
Yeah, I miss like certain things. Like, I really love Missy. I want her to come back.
Did you see this as a Missy comic?
I did. Which is why I said something. I know it's happened in the audio world that like Missy and River met up, and I'm like, ooh, I want to watch them just go be delightful together.
Yeah, they would be like partners in crime.
Oh yeah, it would be the new Thelma and Louise.
Yeah, as much fun as Missy was, the new version of the Master, which I always forget his name, it's like Sasha something. Sasha Dewan or something. Sasha Dewan. He is as much fun as Missy, but in a scary way.
Ooh, okay.
You know, Missy is kind of like lighthearted and mischievous. She's kind of the Loki of the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah.
And Dewan is definitely the master. Like he loses that lightheartedness, but he does it in such a fun way.
Well, we could be talking about Doctor Who forever, but
honestly,
we have a lot to get through. So, in other news, the Batgirl movie is coming along nicely. J.K. Simmons is in talks to return as Commissioner Gordon, which I have to say, as much as I love him as J. Jonah Jameson, which he will always be the only one for me, I really liked his Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. So I was not opposed to that. In Star Wars news, because we had to throw it in there, the other day, Rosario Dawson posted on her Instagram stories that both Menina Masood, I hope I'm saying that right, from Aladdin, is going to be playing Ezra, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm just going to say Lars, the voice actor from Rebels, is going to be playing Thrawn. I had heard the Menina Masood one before. He had kind of teased some of that stuff on his Instagram. So that didn't surprise me. I am legitimately surprised that they're getting the voice actor to play Thrawn, because I
love it.
I'm all for it, but I figured after they didn't do it for Ahsoka, they weren't going to do it at all.
Yeah, but they did do it for the Mandalorian chick. I can't think of her name. Katie Sackhoff. Katie Sackhoff voiced the character, and then she played her live action.
Okay.
I think that Ahsoka's casting might be a one-off. They wanted somebody who was gonna be a big name draw.
Yeah, probably.
And Rosario Dawson has like that box office name recognition kind of level that she could anchor a TV show by herself.
Yeah.
And you know, Disney is all about taking chances when it's not really a chance, you know, where there's not really any risk involved and it's kind of a sure thing. And then they're like, oh, look at us. We're putting a female casted Bo-Katan. Yes, thank you, Bo-Katan. I could not think of what the character name was.
I was like,
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the actor is Lars Mikkelsen.
Thank you.
It's got 2 Ks back to back, but it's not that hard.
I couldn't remember his last name, and I was like, I'm just not going to. Hey, Johnny. But yeah, I'm super pumped. Like, I really wanted Benedict Cumberbatch to play Thrawn, but I don't think he has time with all of the Doctor Strange centric stuff coming up.
Plus,
so I'm all for it.
If it was a Thrawn TV show, I could be like, okay, they might go that way. They want somebody who's really got that charismatic presence that they can anchor the show.
Yeah.
but in this case, it's like 100% Ahsoka, and they're going to bring in Ezra and Thrawn to continue that storyline. A lot of people are going to be excited about that, but at the end of the day, you have to care about Ahsoka more.
Yeah.
And if everybody's there to watch Thrawn, Ahsoka's storyline is not going to pan out, and it's not going to be as good of a show.
Yeah.
So I definitely like. This is just the world according to Critty, but I definitely believe that's why they recast Ahsoka. It was to have that huge name that they could say, oh, Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka.
Yeah.
That'll get people to watch.
Yeah.
Versus people like us who are going to watch because we love the character Ahsoka.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm all for, bringing voice actors in to play characters. I love it when it happens because these are the guys that have spent a lot of time with these characters. They've done a lot of this stuff. Wow, Hallie, that is, you are quite certain there.
Hallie and I are like so on the same page right now.
Oh yeah, it's adorable. So, before we get to the gigantic lawsuit, there has been a push to do the so-called release the air cut. I doubt it'll ever happen. But because of the fact that they let James Gunn have creative freedom.
So you're talking about the first Suicide Squad movie.
Yes, the first Suicide
that
Squad.
After the Snyder Cut of Justice League turned out to be a better movie.
Yeah.
He said, hey, you know what? I had a cut of my movie too. There was a lot fundamentally wrong with the first Suicide Squad. I don't think that another cut of that movie could save it.
So here's the thing. They had two versions, right? So they had the kind of dark, gritty Ayer version. And then they had kind of the more studio family friendly at the time version.
Yeah, a little bit campy, a little bit silly, but it never was effectively silly or effectively campy.
And they screened both of them, right? And the campy version got better scores. Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, and I don't understand this, they hired the company who cut the trailer to cut the movie. And I'm like, you're Warner Brothers. You have all the money in the world. You have some of the best editors in the world down the street. What the hell? And like they turned it into a video game. And I literally went and saw this movie because I was like, there's no way it can be as bad as it is, right? Oh boy, was I wrong. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to do an extended edition. And I was like, okay, cool. It's going to be like Justice League. There's going to be 30 extra minutes of footage. It's going to make more sense. Nope. I was wrong.
No.
There's a lot wrong with the movie.
Some movies are just not redeemable by another cut.
Yeah. Well, and so like they kind of like, it's not even that. It's just like they took two versions of the film and Frankensteined them together. So none of it made any sense. So while I would be intrigued with an Ayer cut, it'll never happen. Unless it'll cost them nothing to do but just release it on HBO Max.
And honestly, like that's what they did with Snyder Cut, except that they allowed him to do extra retakes and some extra shooting and stuff.
Yeah.
Besides that, they didn't promote it. They didn't market it. They didn't toss it in theaters.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that much of a risk for them to be like, yeah, okay, go ahead, do your thing, put it on HBO Max. Yeah. So I would support having director's cuts of movies come out on HBO Max and then put whatever other version you want in the theaters.
Yeah.
I'm all fine. I'm fine for that. That would be an easy way to make the directors happy, make the crew happy. They'd get their version out there, but then you can still put whatever family friendly thing that you're interested in selling. You can put that in the theaters and try to make your money.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into the thing that everybody's talking about. So there's been a lot written about this lawsuit for a correct reason. Now I have gone through and read what has been released, and I'm not a lawyer, so take this with a grain of salt, but I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot of articles. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos by people who are actually lawyers breaking this down. So what Scarlett Johansson is claiming is that she had what was so before COVID, a exclusive theatrical release was just that. There was no straight to streaming or, it was either to theaters or direct to video. Okay.
Yeah.
So because of that, they used the traditional language of that it was a exclusive theatrical release, and that because she was also an executive producer on the film, had bonuses attached to the performance of the film. Okay. Now,
which is pretty standard in Hollywood.
Yeah, and especially at this level. For example, RDJ had kickbacks like that on Iron Man 3. He made something like $75 million.
Yeah.
So this is not unusual. And in fact, I'm sure a lot of the big six have something similar to this. And so because COVID happened, and probably pre-COVID, this movie would have done, if not $1 billion, close to it.
If they released it a couple of years ago, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would have, I don't know where it would have placed in the pantheon of Marvel movies. I would say probably middle of the road. It was a good movie.
Yeah. It just based on like typical box office, I'd say it probably would have hit $750 million, give or take.
I would say peg it like slightly higher than Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
It was a better female-driven superhero movie, but it wasn't going to get Endgame kind of numbers.
No, not at all. And it was real cheeky of Avatar to re-release so they could.
It feels like they're just going to keep doing that. Honestly. Anytime a movie comes out to beat them, they're going to be like, re-release.
Yeah. Anyways.
Stop giving them your money. Avatar is not a good movie.
It's so boring, and it's too long.
It's blue aliens, and it's weird, and it was great visual effects, but that's all it has going for it. We've moved past it. Stop giving them your money. Okay.
So, it's not Lord of the Rings Extended Edition,
I hate that movie. I watched it one time, like when it was on TV, and I was like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, same. So what she's suing them over is basically two things. One is breach of contract, and two is not negotiating in good faith, which is not quite the technical term, but it's close. Hey, Durgan, what's up?
Yes, Durgan, thank you.
Yes.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is such a superior product than Avatar the movie.
Which
Avatar the Airbender last movie.
Yeah.
Like that was bad.
Like that was bad too, but it was better than Avatar, the other Avatar.
Yeah.
Which is
of all of the Avatar things, only watch the animated Nickelodeon show.
100%. 100%. So because of that, because they released it on Disney Plus at the same time, the numbers broke down to it made $90 million the first weekend. 60 million of that was on Disney Plus. And so she's not getting any cut of that money at all, which is ridiculous. And they have a series of email communications from Marvel in 2019 saying, yes, we have an exclusive theatrical release window. If that changes, we will renegotiate. Well, they have reportedly tried to renegotiate, and they did not. They reached out several times. Disney didn't do anything. So, because of that, she is suing them basically for a cut of the streaming services. Now, I don't think this will actually go to trial, because if it goes to trial and she wins, then streaming as we
Oh.
know it is pretty much
Yeah.
over because everybody will have to get kickbacks. So
They definitely they need to settle this,
Yeah.
not just for the rightness of like the way that they responded is
Oh.
honestly what has everybody up in an uproar,
yeah,
because you are like one of the biggest companies on the planet. You can afford to share profits with a person in your company that produced this movie.
so they
But you can't afford to have the negative publicity, and you
Yeah.
can't afford to go to trial, lose this, and have to like percentage out your stuff
Yeah.
for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
You can't set a precedent with this.
Yeah. So this appears to be all Chapek, which he's got some issues. Had Bob Iger still been running, that
Mhm.
statement never would have been released.
Oh gosh, no.
And they've kind of doubled down on this. There was another article recently about I mean, you're not wrong. As much as I love them, they are a company, and companies are not
They are
always...
a company, and they are very driven by profits.
Oh,
Like
yes.
they put on this family friendly facade, and they produce a lot of things that we all love.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, for them, it is about the dollars. It's not about the work.
The fact is their legal team is calling the lawsuit basically a PR stunt, which is just ridiculous. And there's been a lot of people that have come out and said and criticized Disney for what they've said. And basically their statement was, we are saddened that she would, sue us basically during COVID.
Yeah.
Because COVID.
Because you're not making all this money during COVID, are you, Disney?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
you didn't get us all to pay for Disney Plus and then increase the prices of Disney Plus.
Yeah. So
and then you're building into it this $30 premium, whatever. It's a good option for me because I'm not ready to be in a theater with other people that breathe through their mouths.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought my $30 were going towards the box office sales.
Yeah.
But they're not,
Not at all.
Like for me, that is a good deal because it would have cost Paul and I about that to go to the movie theater, assuming we didn't get all the popcorn and nachos that he wants. But for that not to be included in the compensation for the directors and the actors and all of that, that is what's crazy.
Yeah. So it's so there's a lot of things that are happening with this. There has been a report that Kevin Feige is livid, to say the least. Now, granted, that is coming from one reporter, but he is pretty well known in terms of track record. So I have a feeling it's probably right. But take that with a grain of salt. But they very easily could have avoided this if they had done what Warner Brothers did. Warner Brothers, when they moved their entire slate to day on day with HBO Max, basically paid everybody, they paid Gal Gadot $20 million. They paid Patty Jenkins $20 million. That's just the ones that we know of. I know that they settled with all of the directors. And they said, here's what we think you would have made, based on what we estimate for box office. Simple and easy. It is going to, you're right, Johnny. It is going to completely change the movie industry. The thing is, the way that it's built now, it's a lot of kickbacks and things for talent, agents, managers, producers, everybody.
Yeah, everything relies on the metrics of how well a movie does.
Yeah.
Like you get a certain amount for actually filming it. And then if it bombs, that's it. If it does great, then you get all of this money. And that's how stars become stars.
Yeah.
But they can take very easily. They're with Disney, they have this premium tier. They
Mhm.
can just count up the people who bought that premium thing, call it a movie ticket,
Yep.
and then you can still add that to the box office number, and you can say, because of like streaming and box office sales, the movie did this. That is a good equivalent. And yes, you can watch the movie over and over again, whereas people going to the theater would have to see it with multiple tickets. But I mean, it's at least reasonable.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it comes down to it, regardless of the money, Disney is in breach of contract.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the simple fact about it.
Yeah. And it took somebody standing up and saying, "Hey, I don't think that that's right. Why am I not
Yeah.
like, okay, Scarlett Johansson had the unfortunate timing that they pushed her movie back and they pushed it back
Yeah.
and they kept changing the date. And then it fell into this period of COVID where it would have been a perfectly fine, good movie sometime around Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been great if it came out then.
Yeah.
Then they had to go back with a character who we all know has already died
Mm-hmm.
and kind of tell the story from a few years ago and be like, hey guys, pretend that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Root for her. Will she make it? Like, okay. It was already going to be enough of a stretch to tell this story in the time that we're already in
Yeah.
the movies that we've already seen. It was a fine movie.
Yeah.
It would have done better if they released it on time.
Well,
If they released it years ago when they wrote the story.
and not only that, but it would have done better if they had not spent the entire movie setting up her replacement.
Yeah, honestly.
Like,
And I think a lot of that was also because we know she's dead.
Yeah.
I think we would have felt differently about it. We would have felt maybe more strong about the family if we didn't know that Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow was dead and that there's going to need to be a replacement.
Yeah.
Then the after credit scene would have been a shock.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been insane. I think they would have left it with her going off with Civil War. I don't think they would have given us Yelena at the graveside.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's happening is other stars are coming out and also starting lawsuits or starting the process.
Yeah.
I think Emma Stone with Cruella had the same situation where she's losing out on bonuses because they released it streaming as well. And I think that you're going to have a lot of pushback from the talent saying, hey, you need to change the language.
Yeah.
And you should have realized that you were really cutting us out of a lot of what we deserve.
Yeah. Well, and there's a third one actually with Gerard Butler with Paramount over a film that was released 9 years ago, and they still haven't paid in that. So
yeah,
you know, it's not just this scenario. Like, everybody's blowing up over this because of who it is, the fact that it's, you know, Disney, and you know,
honestly, most of the anger that I've heard has been about the response about them blaming it on COVID.
Yeah.
And yeah, we are all living in a COVID world. This is not surprising to anyone.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you get to, like, that whole thing about they didn't negotiate in good faith.
Yeah.
That was Disney saying, hey, we can make some more money off of this. You're not going to make more money off of this, but we will.
Yeah.
They don't need it.
Yeah.
They need to support their actors and they need to make movies that the fans want to see. And the way that they do that is by keeping the talent and the directors coming back.
Yeah. There was a very long article talking about not only the implications of this lawsuit, but also like for streaming overall, and I'll link it later on. But there was a Jason Blum from Blumhouse Productions, who has always been kind of the mass producer type production house, which is fine. But he was talking about streaming, and he was like, it is no longer about making a film that is good enough to hit those bonuses because you want people to come and see it. It's about making a film that's good enough to get the next paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And so the quality has gone down, but the quantity has gone up. And so because of that. I mean, look at Netflix, for example. Okay. How often does Netflix release, they may release 5 films that everybody wants to see out of the 90 they may release a year.
Mhm.
Most of their TV shows no one cares about unless it's Stranger Things or The Crown. Speaking of Stranger Things, they released the teaser trailer. Super pumped.
Speaking of The Crown, why is Dolores Umbridge Queen Elizabeth?
Oh, because she's perfect.
What's happening?
She's perfect.
I'm not going to be able to look at her for at least the first episode and see her as the queen. I'm going to be like Dolores Umbridge, cast a charm, and she is walking around the castle now. There's like an Obliviate charm there or something.
There's we have the first image. I'm gonna send it to you. It really does.
I saw that and I sent it to my friends. I was like, "What's happening?"
Yeah, I mean, she looks amazing. I'm not super pumped about this season only because you're gonna get into the Princess Diana drama and
yeah,
not my thing.
Oh
but,
well, it'll be
anyways,
fine.
So. I will link all of these articles down below. You guys can read them to your heart's content. But it's
in our hearts, we all want to go with the actors and directors and just give them their bonuses. Disney, you've got enough money.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. And that's and this is why, like, Premier Access has kind of been this gigantic fail as an experiment. And honestly, I think they just need to, and it'll never go to trial because they're never going to release the numbers. The only time that they kind of released them was when Hamilton came out, and they had something like 750 million new downloads of Disney Plus.
Yeah,
which is insane. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But we're
all expecting a settlement though.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just
100%.
They'll settle, that they'll do the next one, and then they'll very quietly start writing streaming services into people's contracts.
Yeah. And it'll be real quick, easy, and slightly painless going forward.
Honestly, it did not need to be this huge of a news story.
You
should have just been like, oh, sorry about that, the wording, and then played it off, paid the lady. It would have gone away. We wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah. I honestly, like, the thing that kind of impressed me the most is I can't tell you how many videos I watched of Scarlett Johansson pumping up this movie before it was released. Like, she played the role of the consummate professional through all of this, which kudos, because it would have been real easy to drag this all out before the movie happened.
Oh yeah. Like, she knew she wasn't getting a cut of that.
Yeah.
Very early on.
Yeah. So, anyways, switching gears, Suicide Squad.
Okay, so spoilers if you have not watched the Suicide Squad yet. The Suicide Squad.
The new
just
one
came out yesterday.
Yeah.
The new one. The time we're filming this.
But I'll be honest, like, going into this movie, I only watched it because I knew we were gonna review it. Otherwise, I never would have watched this movie.
I would have turned it on. I might have fast forwarded a couple of parts. I might have turned it off part of the way through. It was not my cup of tea either.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not really a James Gunn fan. Like, I like the first Guardians, and that's it. I haven't liked anything else of his. And
what else has he even done?
He's done a lot of horror films.
Yeah. I'm not usually into like Bloods and Guts and whatever.
Yeah, no, not usually.
When we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that this movie was created for people who are a fan of Deadpool. And Deadpool is better.
Yeah.
Deadpool is the same kind of like, oh, that was a lot of gore. That was a little bit too much for comic bookiness, but it had the wit and the sarcasm and the charismatic Ryan Reynolds, who I love to pieces.
Yep.
This did not have that.
No, not at all.
It was really just the gore and comic book costumes
and dick jokes. And I just I'll be like, I know a lot of people, there's this big push to like separate the art from the artist. I'll be honest, I don't think anybody should have rehired James Gunn. Like there's a point where we have to go, okay, you know, there's some lines people shouldn't cross. You know, Mel Gibson has been basically blacklisted because he's an anti-Semite, or he's at least said anti-Semitic things, okay? And I'm all for it. I kind of put pedophilia jokes in that same category. Like, that's just not cool. And I know people, you know, that were all over Disney because they overreacted. Well, Disney's a family company at the end of the day. Like,
yeah,
they're designed for 6 to 18-year-olds. And so, I was not a fan. But I watched this movie and like within the first 5 minutes, like someone got their face blown off, and I was like, cool.
Yeah, there were a lot of okay, so just to start it off, it starts with the character of Savant, which I don't even remember what he does.
I couldn't tell you.
Like he has really good aim or something. Yeah. They get together, the Suicide Squad, and they start going on a mission. And you really don't get introduced to any of these characters.
No.
But like Pete Davidson is one of the guys, and Michael Rooker plays the other one. He played Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'm not gonna lie, I looked at him and I was like, huh, this reminds me a lot of Jigabachi.
So Savant is a genius level intellect, but forgetful, a mixed martial artist, and multilingual. Like you see all these characters, and then they immediately just start getting massacred, and in very graphically gross ways.
Yeah,
you know, it's, for me, it was like I took this first few minutes of the movie and I was like, oh, so it's that kind of movie.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but I can understand why they chose to go with this tone.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. Harley Quinn is there, Rick Flag is there, and so you're like, okay, well, you know, they're completely outnumbered, but it's fine. But everyone around them just gets massacred. So then you're like, oh, so Pete Davidson and Michael Rooker are like not in this movie, turns out.
Yeah.
And as Savant started swimming away, I was like, okay, surely his powers are going to be like that he can rewind time, or that he like thinks things ahead strategically. And so he was like, oh, we're all going to get massacred. Let's not go on the beach.
Yeah.
But no, he just dies too.
Yeah.
I was like, what is the point of all of this? And then you see a second team on a different shore. I'm like, oh, you mother.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
it was rough.
The only character that acted the way that I expected them to was Waller. And like,
yeah, she was a bit darker in this movie than in previous iterations. I love Viola Davis.
Yeah, I
really do. But yeah, this is probably the best portrayal of Waller I've seen. And she's been live action in
a lot,
at least 2 movies now, and there's been a version in the CW Arrowverse shows as well. But this was pretty rough.
Yeah, there was no like just like straightforward timeline. It was a lot of jumping around. And back and forth,
and you're like 8 minutes earlier, and then you just skip over to another. I'm like, okay, I guess
it felt like, and I'll be frank, it felt like when I'm like hardcore struggling with my ADHD and I'm bouncing from task to task. That's what it felt like, and I was like, I am getting a headache watching this movie. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, and it was very obvious that they were pushing Idris Elba to be, you know, the lead and basically the new Deadshot, which cool.
I love Idris Elba. I don't care what role he plays. I'm on board.
Yeah.
He's fun.
It felt like kind of a darker version of Luther, which I was okay with up until everybody started getting massacred.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I don't really like Helly with the dad jokes.
Thanks, Ellie.
Because I don't have a rib shot.
So just kind of rolling through the story of the movie. So we get the first team absolutely just butchered on, I mean, split in half people, face blown off people. It was not pretty. And half of the characters, I was like, you're in this movie? Oh, yeah. Nope. Turns out you're not.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then we get a second team that lands on another shore. And we're never really told what their mission is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just like, oh, okay, well, we're on this shore. And then they're told, okay, well, you've got to get to this place. And they keep calling it Jotunheim or Jotunheim.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, isn't that sounds very Norse?
Yeah.
And that's like a Thor thing. And this, I was just distracted by that the whole time because Idris Elba, of course, is one of the Asgardians as well.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to get to this place, but along the way, they are told that they need to rescue Rick Flag.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he was on team 1 and he is not dead. So we'll go rescue Rick Flag. And then we have like this weird competition between Peacemaker, who is just completely irrelevant to the story, in my opinion.
Yep.
And Bloodsport, where they're both like single shot killing people and trying to show off. And isn't it so cool? They do the same thing.
It was a dick measuring contest, and
I
wasn't for it.
And by the time they each kill a couple dozen people, they get there and then they realize, oh, we're killing good guys.
Yeah.
But nobody seems concerned with that.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, oh, hey, come help us. And meanwhile, she's just looking like the slaughter of all of her friends.
Yeah.
But she's on board too. So, okay, we'll just all go to the Capitol. Woohoo.
It
was a little bit of a stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. And at one point, Harley got captured to then get romanced by the president for some strange reason. And I was like, what?
Which she was just like super on board for, but then immediately kills the guy afterward.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I am all for like, Harley Quinn being, red flag. Let's not do this.
Yeah. Honestly, that was probably that is one of my 2 favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah.
After Harley and the military coup new president guy, break all of the treasures during raucous lovemaking. I love the word raucous. That's fun. Raucous.
it's like shenanigans. Great word.
Yeah, it's fun to say. So after they're like breaking vases and into all sorts of whatnots, he starts describing how he's going to use the power in Jotunheim to make the world bow at his feet or something. And she's like, wait, you're going to kill kids? Oh, darn, that's a red flag. And I promised myself. And she has this whole long speech about how she's murdering him as she's murdering him. And that was probably my favorite Harley Quinn, one of my 2 favorite Harley Quinn moments. Honestly, at this point, I think that Warner Brothers is just like, hey, we like Margot Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
She's fun. Let's put Harley in everything and make sure she comes out on top. Because it's really their safe bet.
Yeah, honestly, like it reminded me, there's this kind of Tumblr idea floating around of Harley and Poison Ivy breaking into a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And they call Batman to basically fix the situation. And instead of them actually doing anything nefarious, it's just her talking with people and like giving relationship advice and being a psychologist.
Oh God, I love that.
And I'm just like, can I have this, please?
Let's make that a movie. That sounds much funnier. Harley gives advice because she is a trained psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm not sure which she is.
I'm just like, let's do it. I'm all for it. I don't even care if you do it in the animated show, which it feels like that would be more of an animated thing.
Thanks, Ellie. Classy jokes there.
So she's
Harley
all over the
is
place.
she is killing the president. She gets captured again. In the meantime, everybody else is kind of going like heading towards the Jotunheim place, and then they realize Harley's alive. So then they're going to rescue her, but she rescues herself. Like a lot of this is just a pointless, gratuitous violence as they just kill each other in fun and interesting ways.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was more on board with the polka dot guy than I expected to be.
Yeah, same.
The scenes where he was like visualizing everybody as his mother actually made me laugh.
Oh yeah, especially the gigantic version.
Yeah,
we'll
the
get to
gigantic one.
A little bit later.
That was pretty funny. And I was more on board with King Shark too.
Yeah.
Like that was voiced by Sylvester Stallone, and that was ridiculous and funny.
Yeah.
So there were moments. I think if you had toned down, if you had made this like halfway less of an R rating,
yeah,
I think it could have been a better movie.
Yeah,
because a lot of it was just like, it was just a little gross, and
it didn't have to be an R. Honestly,
yeah.
Like it could have been, a hard PG-13.
I don't think a PG-13 maybe that would probably be a little too low. Yeah. I would even be fine with it being an R rating. Just like cut down the grossness by half. And I would watch this movie again.
Like honestly, I as I was scrolling through Twitter today to catch up on news and things, I literally saw someone that was like, "Is it wrong that I want the picture of King Shark ripping somebody in half as my wallpaper?" And I was like, "Yes, it is.
Yes, that is wrong. That was gross."
It was just like, I was like, "What is happening right now?" Okay,
yeah.
So,
but King Shark eating somebody, I was fine with that. That made me laugh a little bit.
There was at one point I think he's snacking on like the general, and he's just like randomly like doing it in chunks. I was like, dude, just swallow the thing. Like, why do you have to prolong this?
Did you notice he went from the beginning of the movie, he had a 6-pack, to at the end of the movie, he had a beer gut?
Yeah.
Because he kept eating people?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. Like that is actually kind of funny. Like there was a lot of promise in this.
Yeah, I know, Helly. I only go on Twitter to like get news for this. That's the only reason I'm on it.
Yeah.
So they get the gang together. They smuggle themselves into the city. They lose comms, which means we basically don't have to have Waller and her like weird office of people for a while.
Which they all seem to fall asleep while they don't have comms. Like, that's what I do at the office. Okay.
I was like, dude, go home. But
so they managed to capture Thinker.
Yes.
I did actually like the scene where they Bloodsport and Rick Flag and Peacemaker got captured at the bar, creating a diversion. And then so they're all like, haha, you can kill somebody with one blow on one. And then they all like beat the crap out of the person across from them. Ric Flair. Did I say Ric Flair? Rick Flag.
I mean, that works
too. But yeah, that like there were just these moments where I had a glimmer of what the movie could be.
Yeah.
That was a fun scene. They all just kind of like knocked into them, captured it.
Yeah.
There was nothing gratuitous about it.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
They keep the line everybody keeps saying is that James Gunn had total creative freedom, which
maybe you should not.
If he did, that's a problem. Like it's like the prequels all over again. Like
this read like a 13-year-old teenage boy had written it.
Yeah, I'm just like, you just needed someone. You always need someone to butt up against because that makes you better.
You needed a reason to tell this story, and you needed a reason to have the gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
James Gunn having direct control over everything was not a good reason.
Yeah.
Like he needed some kind of limits. Just tone it down slightly. This would have been a much better film.
Yeah, and honestly, like stop every 5 seconds to do weird visual effects shots. Like they kept doing like 5 minutes later in weird ways, or like Operation Harley and fire. And I was like, why?
I did actually like the transitions. Like I think of them as transitions.
Okay.
And that was one of the parts that I enjoyed. was that like you're watching the film and then suddenly you realize that like, oh, the seaweed spells out what's happening. I kind of dug that.
After a while, it just felt a little gimmicky to me.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
and a lot of this movie felt a little gimmicky.
yeah, like at one point, so they get Thinker, they take Theo to hide, which
and then there's a giant starfish that is mind controlling people that they need to thwart. But Waller's like, no, you blew up the building, you destroyed the evidence, walk away, that's fine. And then they're gonna. Yeah.
I will say the only thing I actually liked about this movie was Peter Capaldi was basically playing the Doctor. And it made me so happy to watch that again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I put that in the chat in the spoilers room of our Discord. I was like, Peter Capaldi plus this kind of character plus this kind of story equals Doctor Who. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. It was great.
It really felt like the Doctor. Speaking of our Discord. Yay!
It was fantastic.
So Waller orders everybody to walk away, and instead they're going to go save the people because there are innocent people in this place. And so then we have a pretty fun fight. We lose Polka Dot, we lose Rick Flag, we almost lose Ratcatcher, but then she gets saved at the last minute, which
we almost lose Peacemaker.
Yeah. Oh no, we do lose Peacemaker.
No, there's an end credit sequence all the way at the end where he's alive. Yeah.
Is that why there's a TV show? I was hoping it was just gonna go back. Whatever.
Yeah. Anyways, and the reason Rick Flag is dead is because Peacemaker killed him because he was supposed to destroy the drive and Rick wanted to release it, which, hey, good guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm never quite sure what Rick Flag's deal is. He just gets in charge of all these Suicide Squad people, but at least in the last one he had like kind of a love interest.
Yeah,
and this time he's just like, oh, I'm gonna do the right thing, but you're surrounded by bad guys.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was weird. So overall, I saw the one post-credit scene with Weasel. I did not stick around to see the other, so I missed that.
The only reason I knew about it is because I was listening to an entertainment show and they were talking about them there, and like, yeah, there is a second one. But I will say, like, the way that they took down this gigantic starfish, which I'll be honest, I was not a huge fan of Ratcatcher. It just grosses me out.
It was kind of gross.
And then, like,
just like everything else, it was kind of gross.
Yeah, and then like the fact that like they basically,
but they did use Harley in at least a nice way, where she wasn't just eye candy wearing short shorts in this movie. She actually had a purpose.
Yeah, and the fact that she threw the javelin through the eyeball, and then all the rats got in,
and then was just swimming around in the eye juice. It was like, ugh,
it was gross. And I was just like, cool, I'm done. So overall, if you like weird, gratuitous, violence,
if you watched Deadpool and you were like, I wish there was more blood.
Yeah,
this movie is for you.
Yeah, or you really like James Gunn's other films, basically.
Yeah, personally, I could see where they were going with the story. At least the story kind of made sense to me.
Yeah,
I could have done with, like, I would honestly probably be down for a TV edit of this, not on HBO, but like on AMC Family.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would be better without the extra graphic-y kind of deaths, and then I'd probably think it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
My favorite single scene was the one that from the trailer where Harley's screaming and there's like the flowers behind her.
Yeah.
Turns out she was like imagining this like animated world around her as she kicked the crap out of people with a spear.
I will say that was the one part I actually liked.
Yeah, that was my single favorite scene of the movie.
Yeah. I quite enjoyed that. I was Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Johnny.
Johnny B, that is fine because Margot Robbie wearing short shorts is for someone. It's not for me, but that's okay. And we all understand that.
It's honestly.
Well, this is our third time seeing Margot Robbie as Harley. Honestly, I feel like they were setting up the Peacekeeper TV show or Peacemaker. which I am not looking forward to watching. I'll probably give it a shot, but the character just felt boring and too like bro-ish for me.
Yeah.
He was like aggressive, and unless they have like a really good story that makes me interested, I wouldn't be there for John Cena and I wouldn't be there for the Peacemaker character.
Yeah, I'm with you, Durgan. I like Margot Robbie outside of DC. I don't think DC has ever figured out actually how to make a good live action Harley Quinn. The only really good the only good Harley Quinn has been the animated show,
which is where the character originated.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the only place it's been actually good. So overall, if you like,
I'm giving it a 3
yeah,
out of 5. It was.
I wouldn't even go
okay.
that high. I'm gonna go like a 2 because I really, really didn't like it. Like I flat out like 30 minutes into
You're
the
right.
film.
It was a javelin. That was the whole point of Flula Borg's character. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, the one glowing review that I think myself and pretty much everyone can say is it was better than Suicide Squad.
It was definitely better than the first
and that is all the good that we can really say of it.
Yeah, and Idris Elba is very good in this, and that's about it.
Well, Idris Elba is just wonderful in general.
This is true.
I have liked him in anything I have seen. I would love to see him as James Bond. Oh, that'd be great.
Oh, that'd be so good. Okay, so we're going to switch on over to this week in comics history. We're going to be covering Watchmen and The Barbarossa, so we will be right back.
And now, for this week in comics history.
Okay,
I'm surprised we talked about
pictures.
Suicide Squad longer than I thought we would.
Yeah. So we'll start with Watchmen because it's a slightly bigger thing. So, Watchmen is we're talking the team overall. It was created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. It released in 1986.
September of 86, actually. So coming up on its anniversary.
Nice. Yes, the video game version of Harley is very good. I'm actually really looking forward to the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, the new Injustice movie, or not movie, TV
game,
video game. Thank you. So it was released from 86 to 87 before being condensed and released as one volume. It has been it is pretty critically acclaimed, although it is a very niche comic. It's been kind of done in live action a couple of times. There was, of course, the Zack Snyder Watchmen film, which I've seen, but it's been a while. And then, of course, the more popular HBO series of 2 years ago, I believe it was. So the main characters within it are... Where is it?
I think the one that most people know is Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan.
The comedian, Rorschach.
Yeah. Night Owl. I'm not going to be able to... oh, there it is.
Ozymandias,
the comedian, Dr. Manhattan. I had to scroll down far enough. Dr. Manhattan, Silk Spectre, and Rorschach. Like I said, it's a weird comic. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about Dr. Manhattan's assets because no.
I gotta say, when the first movie came out, I was an impressionable child. I saw the smiley face logo, which if you're thinking about Watchmen, you're really thinking about that like gunshot smiley face that is kind of iconic.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, that looks fun. I was not old enough to see that movie.
Yeah.
It was a little much for me. So I have not actually gone back and seen a whole lot of Watchmen stuff.
You know, I have the TV show on my watch list. It's just I have so much other stuff to watch. So I highly recommend checking it out. The center of the comics is that it's investigating a murder of Edward Blake, and it's basically they're all vigilantes and they decide to actually investigate the murder. And they figure out that Blake is the comedian, and that's the reason why he was killed. So they get the gang back together, basically, and pull in Night Owl, Dr. Manhattan, Silkspire, and Ozymandias.
It's definitely a franchise that is interesting. If you're like a little sick of DC, if you're a little sick of Marvel,
Yeah.
this is a great way to get into some of the more like streamlined. This is a small run, a small story.
Yeah.
You can kind of experience the world that they are in without having to like delve into 50 years worth of history.
Yeah, it's very like the DC version of Sin City. Kind of that film noir style without the coloring of film noir. So it's a good little series. The Zack Snyder film is very, very good. And like I said, I haven't watched the Watchmen series, but I know it's been very well reviewed. Which is always a good thing. So, the other one we have for today, we're kind of pushing through so we can get to Long Halloween, which is excellent.
We meant to talk about it last week and weren't able, so this will give us a little bit of chance to hit it up.
Yeah, I got massively sunburned, which was not fun. So Barbara Gordon, of course, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon, was created by. Okay, hold on. So she was in TV first, and was created as part of the 1960 Batman series. Which is always fun. And then she made her first comic book debut as Batgirl in Detective Comics 359 in January of 1967. She's been portrayed a couple of times by various people. If I remember correctly, she was in the Smallville series at one point or another. I feel like
she might have been. I'm not remembering that.
She's been.
Let me look.
She's been all over the place. So she has her own series, of course, Batgirl. She's been in the Bat Family. She was in the Bat Family run with Dick Grayson. She was in The Killing Joke, which is very good.
She's not in Smallville that I can see. I do really enjoy her in the DC Superhero Girls show, though, where she does appear as Batgirl.
Gotcha.
That's a fun little animated series if you're looking for something lighthearted.
She's most known as Oracle. She kind of splits her time between Batgirl and Oracle.
Well, Batgirl is like when she's younger, a superhero, and then she's injured, and she spends the rest of she's in a wheelchair, and so it became a way to show that you don't need legs and you don't need to be strong and you don't need to be flying off of roofs to be super. So Oracle is a great support character for the Batman universe, where she's very intelligent. She's a great detective and she helps out the superheroes, and is still a superhero in her own right as Oracle, but she's in a wheelchair.
So as Oracle, she first appeared in Suicide Squad number 23 in 1989. There's the right numbers. And of course, she is heavily featured in Birds of Prey. Her first DCEU appearance, they hinted at it in Batman v Superman in a lot of the deleted stuff. She's been all over the place in terms of popping up within the Batman franchise. She's of course getting her own film relatively soon. She's gonna be in Titans.
Yeah.
She's been on a lot of animated stuff.
Yeah,
over
mostly
the years.
animated. We are expecting a live action movie for Batwoman.
Yes.
Or is it Batgirl or Batwoman?
Batgirl.
Actually, I'm not sure.
Batgirl. So that's going to be on HBO Max, I believe.
Mhm.
So she's been kind of all over the place. She's a fun little character. I feel like my brain is
She's
failing
definitely
me.
smart. She has definitely been played in many different versions, and she's usually a support, but she's one of those characters that you can kind of sink your teeth into and really get behind. She's kind of the underdog sometimes, but really strong in her own right.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite run is a comic book run called DC Bombshells, which is kind of like a World War II era. A bit of it is drawn in like pinup style, but she is like, there's one cover I can think of where she's Batgirl and she's wearing like a baseball, like think a League of Their Own kind of costume, and she's holding a bat. And those stories are like all of the Batman heroes and villains that are ladies, kind of teaming up together to thwart the Nazis. It's a fun comic book series. So I'm going to put a link to, I guess I'll do the Wikipedia article about that because I don't want to link anything that might be like a place where you can read it online that might not be safe.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
I'll put that in our Discord.
Cool. So let me switch back over to our regular one. There we go. The newest Batman animated movies. I don't remember how many parts they are doing. It is 2 parts. Okay, cool. So Batman Long. I feel like it was. Feels like there was long. It was long. It should be longer than that because I don't think they ended it. Or maybe I'm going crazy. It's been a crazy week and I've watched a lot of stuff, and I watched them back to back. So maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. But so the Long Halloween. We've talked about this comic before. It's a 13-part comic. It's basically a Batman rogues gallery of everybody trying to kill everybody. It starts on Halloween, of course, with the nephew of Carmine Falcone getting murdered. And we go in, of course, so the main 2 with it in this are Batman, pre-Detective Batman, and Selena Kyle Catwoman, played by the late Nayana Rivera, which is such a shame because she was so good. So we of course have Harvey Dent in this as well. This is pre-Two-Face Harvey Dent, where they find the Falcone's kind of cash drop, and they decide to burn it, which is a lot of fun. And then going into on Thanksgiving, who gets killed on Thanksgiving? I forget.
Are you looking for who's killed in Thanksgiving?
Yes.
It's just like a bodyguard. Most of the deaths are not really noteworthy people.
Yeah.
It's people tied to the
Falcones.
Falcone crime family. A lot of their underlings. New Year's Eve is notable because it's the son of Falcone that's killed. But basically, the animated show is taking us through the holidays.
Yeah.
Through this dark year, and there's a death for every major holiday, and there's a trinket left behind that symbolizes that holiday as kind of a calling card of the killer.
Thanksgiving is notable because that's the first time they go talk to Calendar Man. And that's when they realize that Joker has escaped, which is a lot of fun. For New Year's Eve, I love this because Joker just tries to douse everybody in acid, and Batman stops
I do
him
love
as
that he
usual.
realized he didn't know how to fly a plane before taking off.
Yeah, and he also didn't know, that there was a safety,
Hmm.
which is so much fun. And then of course, as New Year's Eve, with New Year's, Alberto is shot, and it's interesting because the guns are like, the closest I can estimate, they look like a Luger from World War II, with a baby bottle, like nipple, as a silencer, which is so weird.
Yeah. I mean, it eventually makes sense, but it's very like 30s film noir kind of
Yeah.
drawings, which is my favorite era of Batman anyhow.
And then
And
so
a lot of this story as we're going through, if you're like, that kind of sounds familiar, a lot of it was adapted to the Dark Knight trilogy.
yeah,
So especially Harvey as district attorney becoming Two-Face,
yeah.
you're gonna see hints of that through this stuff that you're kind of like, I feel like I've seen something about that. This is why.
Yeah, and this comic in particular is going to be the basis for the new Robert Pattinson Batman movie as well.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. That's good. Hey, Mustang.
Mustang, what's up? So part 1 ends with Falcone asking Bruce to help launder his money, and he refuses because as we find out later, his father got in business with Falcone's father, and it ended badly for him.
Yeah.
And we see Bruce get taken over by Poison Ivy, which is so much fun.
Yeah, honestly, it was creepy and also really well done.
Yes, this has been the best version of Poison Ivy I think I've ever seen. It was marvelous. And so part 2 opens with we get like Valentine's, St. Patrick's, April Fool's, and Mother's Day all in a row. And during that entire time, we see Bruce under Poison Ivy's control.
And Alfred.
And
you
Alfred.
don't really see it until she loses control.
Yeah.
But, that's why Alfred wasn't raising the alarm. The entire mansion is just covered in vines and plants.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
Oh, really nice artwork. It was very cool.
And so during that time, Catwoman finally gets in, and we find out that she's been kind of biding her time, waiting for Ivy to kind of let her guard down a little bit so she can actually get in and
save Bruce,
which is good because as we watch, he's been signing away large parts of his fortune to the Falcones, and I don't know how none of that raised any alarms.
Yeah, I also don't know how they decided to wait so much time to sign everything over. If I had somebody mind controlled, I'd just be like, sign it all over today and then peace out.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have hung around for 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. So
although that is not a plan that I secretly have in place for my future.
So the people killed for Valentine's, St. Patrick, and April Fools are relatively minor. They're all Falcone and Maroni. They're trying to basically start a war. But on Mother's Day, Holiday kills his gun supplier, which is interesting.
So you kind of feel like there's a time on the clock where there's not a whole lot left to do if you don't need your gun supplier.
Yes. And we have Scarecrow escape, which I hate Scarecrow.
Scarecrow is very scary.
He's terrifying, and poor Bruce gets injected with his.
Yeah, we also had the Hatter, didn't we?
Yes.
Isn't that who the little guy was? And
yes.
He kept just talking in weird riddles and rhymes and stuff, and that was a weird. I could have done without that character.
Honestly, yes. It just makes me never want to watch Alice in Wonderland again. So Bruce staggers around Gotham in the hell-induced hallucination, and he ends up in Crime Alley, basically reliving his parents' killing, which is so sad. And then we find out later that Falcone arranged Scarecrow's kidnapping, and of course he goes on a bank robbing spree, which is so much fun. And we find out that the Maroni and son and Falcone's daughter are in love.
Yeah.
Very Romeo and Juliet. And Maroni goes to meet with his father, and his father ends up getting killed by Holiday.
Mhm.
And so because of that, Maroni decides to basically try and take down Falcone and turn state's evidence. And we find out at that point, and everyone's kind of has their suspicions on who Holiday is. A lot of people think it's Dent.
Mhm.
You know,
Because Dent had a pretty decent he had a vendetta against the Falcone crime family.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yes.
And we do get the iconic scene in the court
Yep.
where he's attacked with acid.
Yep. Thus becoming Two-Face.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see, after that, we kind of see Dent start to lose it a little bit. We see the two personality form. You know, we see Two-Face, this personality really start to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we end up, and everybody kind of lets their guard down. Everybody thinks Holiday is dead.
Yep.
And
dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Holiday is not dead.
No, not at all. And at that point, we get a bunch of people kind of attacking the Falcone building. You know, Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, and we hit Dent teaming up with Joker, Grundy, and Penguin to attack the Falcones. They capture everybody, and he does his heads you live, tails you die. Or I might have the backwards. But he ends up killing everybody, which is, you know.
No, definitely heads you die, tails you live, because it's a two-headed coin.
That's what it is. I knew I had it backwards. So we end up getting everybody arrested, and of course Two-Face is thrown in Arkham Asylum, which is where everybody goes.
Yeah.
It's also the nicest iteration of Arkham Asylum I think I've ever seen.
Nice. Usually Arkham is like gross and creepy and the Mad Catter jargon. Okay. Not sure how that character would pan out, but the Mad Catter indeed.
Yep.
So it almost feels like an end credit.
Yeah.
When we finally have the holiday reveal.
Yes. And we find out, you know, Two-Face is taking credit for it, but we find out that it was actually his wife, and she was in a relationship with the son, Albert.
The guy who was killed on New Year's. They were conveniently right after he tries to kiss Catwoman.
I know, right?
Like, surprising that he died and that nobody thought, you know, maybe a jealous ex could be the killer.
Right.
Sure.
And we find out that she was pregnant and that they were married, and that his father forced him to get an annulment and for her to get an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because of that, she thinks he ruined his life. And so she's been dedicated to killing the Falcones ever since.
She even married Harvey Dent just for the fact that he was also against the Falcones.
Yes.
And she thought that he would increase her chances of revenge. And then she was mad at him for going a little bit crazy, and then she had to do it all herself. It was odd.
Yeah. And then we end with the next year's Halloween, and we see there's this great little exchange between Alfred and Bruce about why he leaves candy for trick-or-treaters, and they open the door and it's a family of It's a family with a boy dressed as Batman, which is so adorable. And this is one of those that we actually see like the kind of established Bruce and Selina relationship where they actually know each other's identities and they're actually making it work, which is adorable. And then our lovely post-credit scene, which is Alfred opening the door, the Flash and the Green Arrow are there, and it's like, oh, that's for me.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very talented cast of voice actors. You know, we've got Jason Eccles, Josh Duhamel, Nayana Rivera,
Katie Sackhoff was Poison Ivy.
Yes, Billy Burke, David Dastmalchian, who will always and forever be Polka Dot Man for me. I can't see him as anything else. Let's see, who else do I recognize on here? That's about it. But great cast of characters. I highly recommend this. So both parts are out now. I believe they're going to do a combined version sometime next year.
The second one came out just like last week. That's why we were covering it now. We were waiting for them to both come out.
Yeah.
And this was a great example of DC excelling in animated series. This was good. And it was pretty faithful to the comics. They did change a few things.
Yeah.
With the actual comic book story. In it, the murders are pinned on Falcone's son Albert, who had faked his death, instead of necessarily on Harvey Dent. And there's something else that I remembered was different. The baby wasn't killed. She actually comes back into the storyline as being a child. So there are a few differences, but I think this was a pretty faithful representation, and it definitely had like a really good aesthetic. It was well drawn, well voiced, except my only critique with that is once I remembered that Jensen Ackles played Batman, I couldn't hear him and not picture Jensen Ackles.
That's fair. That's fair. Honestly, like I really enjoyed it. I thought there were parts where it was a little slow in terms of pacing. Especially from part 1 to part 2. Part 1 there was so much setup that it just took forever to get going. And then part 2, it was like a blink and you miss it. So that was my only complaint. And maybe seeing them like as one long thing, the pacing will be better. I like watched them back to back, kinda. I fell asleep halfway through the second one, and then I had to finish it later. But
my favorite part was actually the holiday murders, where you see a little bit, you don't know what's happening, and then you're like, someone dies, and then you see the gun, and then you see the trinket, and then it says Halloween or Mother's Day or whatever it was, and I was like, oh, it kind of gives you a little bit of chills.
Yeah, and they did a good job of setting up some decent red herrings. Like I all the way through thought it was Harvey Dent for sure, no doubt. I never suspected the wife. I figured if it wasn't Harvey, then it was the Joker, because he just seems the type. Now I will say, and I don't recognize the actor who did the Joker. But he did a marvelous Mark Hamill impression, so much so that I actually had to look it up to make sure it wasn't Mark Hamill. And I was slightly disappointed when it wasn't.
We do love Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Oh, he's
pretty
perfect.
Great.
It's perfect. But I digress. Like I said, highly recommend both the animated movies and the actual comic book. DC animation is top notch for the most part. Sometimes they get it wrong, but in this instance, they got it right for sure. Any final thoughts, Critty, before we wrap it up for today?
No, but next week we are going to start with What If. It's coming out next week, so be sure to watch that, you guys, because we are all looking forward to it.
Oh yes. It is going to be. I know it's canon, but it
Mhm.
is an Elseworld story, so it's not. Whatever
Yeah,
happens
don't-
within it is not going to affect the actual
Don't
DC.
expect the timeline not to be messed up,
Yeah.
but honestly, just the placement of What If coming out right as we finished Loki,
hmm
it suddenly makes so much sense because Loki screwed up the timelines. So
Yeah.
it feels like we're just going to be delving down some of those branches and saying, hey, what happens in this timeline? What happens in that timeline? And I can't wait to see it. It's going to be really exciting. Some great MCU actors returning to their roles, a couple of new voices to hear, but it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and it is unfortunately the last thing Chadwick Boseman did.
Mhm.
So that's gonna make me cry, which is not gonna be fun. But
Yeah,
yeah, we will see you guys next week.
you bet.
Have fun, have a good week, stay geeky, and we will catch you later.
Have a good week.